An historic aid experiment is about to be rolled out in Western Kenya. It's radical, it challenges a lot of common perceptions about charity, and it's based in rural villages like this one on the shores of Lake Victoria.
This is huge, this is really big, and it's very different from what you know previously.
Caroline Tetty's working with a group that's going to test whether there's a better way to use the billions spent on foreign aid each year.
The interventions that we're giving here are trying to ask the hard questions about aid effectiveness.
To do that, they'll be handing out cold, hard cash, and what the villagers do with it will be up to them.
For many years, aid has been with us, and there has been very little change that we see in the lives of poor people. Hello, Mercy.
Hi, Mercy. How are you?
I'm fine.
This quiet cash revolution is about to change Mercy Origa's life forever. Mercy lives with her 4 daughters. It's a tight-knit little family, and the girls are her pride and joy.
Kaluwore gi kaka hero nthinda nadwaro ni ngima nthinda osong mbele ngima na bosong mbele oneno kaka min gi no ostrago kodgi kendo en gi wich oneno to mowinjo okete mind mare.
I'm so impressed by Mercy. She has such a strong spirit, a young woman. And she says there are crocodiles and hippos that come out of the lake. Her home is not fenced. And she lives there, like, she sleeps there every single night.
Mercy's been raising the kids on her own since her husband died a few years ago.
Koro ine midong kendi, ine mama, ine baba, ine gimora mora. Giyud tijgi moro, gidagi maber, gimachalo kama. Ndoto yangu kubwa nijenge nyumba kubwa. Mungu anibariki na hiyo pesa nijenge nyumba kubwa. Juu hii nyumba ni ndogo.
Their one-room house is so small, every night she must walk her 3 eldest daughters to her father-in-law's house to sleep.
Kaka kora nindo kodgi mopogore, chunya nigi lit. Desi, kauru mesa nukete koma. Kauru ano kapetu, kauru kapetu.
Tomorrow, Mercy will find out whether her dream of a bigger house will become a reality.
Watoto wangu sasa watafurahi, watakuwa na mimi usiku mzima, tutalala pamoja, tutapiga hadithi pamoja. Wachimukanya chiel, waninde otachiel, wachiwe otachiel, gidhi sikule otachiel.
Her day starts early, drying fish to sell at the local market. This is the daily routine, but today is no ordinary day.
It tastes like a dried fish.
This afternoon, Caroline's aid group, Give Directly, is planning to give Mercy a large amount of cash.
We don't want to leave any behind.
I know, this is money.
Mercy sells her fish at a little shop a short walk away. Giving cash straight to Africa's poor is part of a growing but little noticed shift in the aid world, away from building toilets and handing out blankets, food or livestock.
What I hear now is people making the decision about the change they want to their life.
What's extraordinary is that this cash will come with no strings attached. It doesn't have to be spent on food or education. It can be spent on whatever she likes.
So, I'm looking forward to see basically how is she going to feel, like receiving this money for the first time. This pretty much is going to be the largest amount of money that she's received all her life.
Most of the women at the market stall have also been signed up to the Give Directly program. But for Mercy, this is all new and the anticipation is building. The cash transfer will come by mobile phone and is scheduled for 5 p.m.
Parigi 57. Mara.
Looks like they're going to get a message in a few minutes.
We're waiting and hoping that we can see what happens when they get the mail.
Iwacho adier?
Mercy can't really believe anyone is giving her this much money.
Yani ochalo na lake. To samochalo na lake no.
The text message contains a code she can use at a local store to withdraw cash, the equivalent of $400, more than a year's income.
Niko na raha moyoni mwangu. Hata kama sijaenda kuitoa, nitumie hata kitu kingine. Yani karibu tu nikae karibu na Mungu.
Within the next few weeks, she'll receive a total of $1,000.
Hey, what did you take?
Mercy will finally be able to build a house big enough for her and all her girls to live under the one roof. In the last 6 years, Give Directly has given $100 million in cash to people living in extreme poverty, and it's proving to have a lasting effect.
When we tell people that we are going to give them money, they start doubting us. They're like, give us money? Not water? Not a school? You mean money? To me? Is that true? And we say, yes, it's true. You can hear some music? Yeah.
3 years ago, William Awegi received $1,000. He used nearly half the money to realise a long-held ambition. William bought instruments and started this band.
Mano kodo ben ke jomoko bende kohero diek, jomoko bende kohero udigo koro ani mangi gimonego bed natimo ma winjo kan kod pek momiyo kanene gi miya kamano to ne anene chunyan mondo atim gima dwaro mabro konya mbele.
They head out to a gig at the local pub. The work can be patchy, but it brings in a modest income.
Chone nyalo yudo ka onge kata pesa midhi nyiewo kodo law, lakini kokwa wa play band ni to wanyalo yudo gimo ma wanyalo nyiewo go law kendo nyalo konya kata gu familia maga wa man kodo maber kabisa maonge mabedo shida.
The music system. I'm the roadie. I think. So when you were giving this money out, did you imagine this is what would become of it?
We didn't imagine. Every time we visit our recipients, it's a surprise. And as you can see, these surprises are, but it's a success. It's really groovy.
Groovy.
Buru kochopo seche moko to wabiro bedo kata gi instrument magwa makawa wawero wendo to wa record mna ka kanyo koro kwater kuonde moko jomoko be nyalo biro to wa record mago gini lik mwaneno ka kabo kwanyalo dhi kodo mbele.
Few would argue with unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit, and giving cash to the needy is becoming more popular with big aid groups as well as the Kenyan government. But Give Directly is about to do something a lot more controversial. They're going to give money to everyone, not just the poor, and see what happens.
So Eric had a fishing business and the business collapsed.
Australian Mitch Riley left his corporate law career in New York to come work in the Kenyan bush alongside Caroline Tetty.
For the first time in 2006, the international community spent more on aid than it would actually take to eliminate extreme poverty in the world. So we currently spend $140 billion on aid, and the Brookings Institute has said it would only cost $80 billion to close the poverty gap. And so then we have to ask ourselves, well, why hasn't that happened? And in large part, it's because we're not allocating the aid money that we have efficiently.
What changes happened?
They're experimenting with a new idea known as universal basic income.
You know, the people who are interested understand basically how has this program changed.
It's almost the opposite of the once-in-a-lifetime lump sum payment, like the one Mercy just received. Instead, it gives people small amounts of cash on a regular basis, no matter what their need.
The idea behind the universal basic income is we want to give people a safety net. And so we want to guarantee that whatever happens in their lives, they're going to be able to rely on this payment to get by.
Give Directly is rolling out a 12-year-long trial, paying entire villages a guaranteed monthly income.
Half of it goes to this.
What people do with that money is what we want to find out in this experiment. Do they open more businesses or expand existing businesses? So do they take risks because they know if they fail, they've got a safety net? Do they stay in school longer because they can afford to? They don't have that same income pressure to drop out. Do health services and education services improve because people have more money to pay for those services?
Baby, named after Caroline Tetty. What is this story? What is this?
Is it really?
It's true.
Unlike the dole or other forms of welfare, universal income gives money to everyone, not just the unemployed or the needy. And it's an idea that's starting to be discussed seriously in the developed world as well.
That's because in Western countries, we're facing increased automation and job losses and looking down the barrel of that happening more in the future. Universal basic income could provide a way of easing the blow of that automation by giving people a minimum safety net, which could allow them to contribute to societies in ways that are valuable but are not necessarily rewarded financially.
But here in Kenya, they're already trying it, and it's about to expand as part of a giant experiment involving 26,000 people.
This must be his family. Dennis, Amosi, Udimambe.
Dennis Anam's village is a pilot case for the project. He and every adult here have been receiving small cash payments for the last 8 months. His 11-year-old son, Joseph, has a chronic brain condition and suffers from seizures.
Mainga, Gloria, Tina.
Kon ba pachalal kata guduching en ma babit iwacho na bonomol ke ochako podho gokinyi kata nya godhiambo.
Even though he's been getting the cash payments, he hasn't given up his main business, burning wood to make charcoal. And the guaranteed basic income has allowed him to take out health insurance. Before, he couldn't risk it because he was never sure he'd be able to pay the monthly premiums.
Nyathino ngimane emalich na mokwongo. Mane mwandu ma an go. Yeah. An kaka janyuolne, an ema neno ni ngimane lokore nikech thieth nitiere odhi hospital kama nitiere. Kodhi hospital odhi rwak hospital to bro wuok ka bill isochul gi insurance.
When Dennis and his wife do the family budget, there's new confidence the basics will be looked after. The experiment involves 200 villages as well as a control group that won't get any cash at all. It's being evaluated with the help of a team at Princeton University and MIT. It's an attempt to apply more scientific rigour to giving aid.
What's the evidence, actually, that it's not been done efficiently? I mean, what's the proof that it really does need to change?
I think I'd put the shoe on the other foot and say that organisations should have to prove that their interventions are effective in the same way that before we let drug companies put drugs on the market, they have to demonstrate the effectiveness of those products. And for a lot of interventions in the development space, the evidence just isn't there.
It's all been made possible by the rise of the mobile phone. Text tokens can now be cashed in at the tiniest kiosk in the Kenyan bush. The guaranteed income has started changing the village economy.
Oselokre mang'eny kabisa. Chakoda ne nanyiewo go diek. Ariyo. Aseketo kuoyo piny madhi gedogo. Ni bas ga bende koro sani koro en wach aidha ng'ama ne onge ma ne oderach go kwano mar losodno. Gidhi agero nje chama mar merry-go-round ni wadhi e mbele to karo ko pesa to odwa los go ode ng'ato nyiewo jamni.
For businesses selling the basics, customers are now more regular and reliable. They're promising results so far, but many are keen to see how the study progresses and what they discover over the long term.
What will you do about his health when the money runs out in 12 years?
Naparo mar keto forest mapidho eucalyptus.
Grabi me ol gomka. Just chunga koni. Tina sudi kon. Big babe kon.
I don't know, at least by kai ga paga rumo tangi eucalyptus alfachiel. Uja thiedhiro kende. Actually apidho ne gi yen mondo kendo obed gi gina mare, keno mare.
That's really important, isn't it? I mean, if you're pumping cash in, it's no good if the prices all go up.
It's very, very important. It's very important.
The logistics of the universal income trial are enormous. They're monitoring prices in the market to see if the cash causes inflation. They have undercover staff to detect whether people are subjected to corruption or extortion. And crucially, they're looking at what happens to the work ethic.
We are looking to answer hard questions that are going on in the global space around whether giving poor people money will encourage laziness so that people don't go to work.
And what are the key downsides that you're looking for, the key negative things that might happen?
We have evidence that we have run, through the lump sum programs that we are doing, and one big outcome of that study that was also done here in Kenya is that if you give poor people money, they don't spend it on alcohol or cigarette. They don't waste it. They actually have true needs, and that question of whether poor people spend money on alcohol or cigarette is an assumption that poor people do not know what money is supposed to be used for. Families that received cash from Give Directly had, a very significant reduction in domestic violence. People who received the lump sum transfers had lower stress levels. And those are really, really important indicators, especially for poor families. If you're less stressed, you're more motivated to work.
Caroline Teti comes from this region and knows only too well what its people are up against.
My primary school was mud-walled. You couldn't make the difference between a window and a door because they were the same sizes. The wall kept falling every time. I wore shoes for the first time when I was going to high school. It's been a road. It's been a rough road to be where we are right now. Yes.
Caroline says the old ways of distributing aid, food handouts and housing projects are often inefficient because they don't give individuals a choice.
I started working in development aid, and now many years, 15 years and still counting. And we're still talking about the same problems that we talked about when I started working. People going without food, children not able to go to school, and we are putting in billions of dollars to change that life. So the big question today is, If aid is supposed to reverse poverty, what has been happening? Where is the missing link?
That missing link has become the subject of Kenya's first mockumentary about the aid industry.
Hi, I'm Scott Bartley, and I'm an alcoholic. Ooh, wrong meeting.
Initially, I think the idea came up from my business partner, Hussein, and he came up with something on the back of a napkin, and he says, NGO, comedy, dysfunctional.
It was supposed to say, save the elephants.
It's basically these characters who have the best of intentions. We want to save Africa, you know.
We mustn't lose sight of what is important here.
Saving Africa.
And then they're working for a bureaucracy that has a big intention, but maybe they haven't asked fundamental questions like, what do you want? You know?
Why? Why?
It hit a nerve, and not just here in Kenya.
I'm here to work with Aid for Aid Kenya in this, a brand new era, an era of accountability, of mobilization, of transparency.
We have a portal on our website. We've asked people, if you have an interesting story about NGOs, please submit it. So to tell you the truth, we got bombarded with thousands of stories. They were so absurd that even our fictional comedic environment could not handle it.
Ironically, they got some of their initial funding from an NGO.
We asked this NGO, why are you funding us? We're making fun of you. And they said, well, we need more answerability and accountability within the industry. So we want to enhance that. And we said, okay, fine.
I've worked for my mother's NGO since I was 6 years old, where I gave my first speech at the plaza. After that, I did a 6-month internship in Casablanca, where I wrote my master's thesis entitled Kenya, the State of the Political Economy of Industrialization, ICT Infiltration, and Capacity Building.
Salim's big surprise came when a United Nations official invited them to screen it at the UN HQ in Nairobi.
It was a full house. And we got a standing ovation at the end because they all felt that this is so true. You know, there are some bureaucracies that even people within the organization are like, yeah, we could get away with, you know, we could do away with this. When you want to change the world, you have to change the way people see themselves. And when you guise truth in humor, it's sort of an acceptable way to take in and to imbibe that truth.
In the real world, the limitations of aid can be seen nowhere more clearly than on the outskirts of Kenya's capital, Nairobi, in a slum called Kibera. Here, NGO has another meaning.
The main name that the NGOs are called in the area is, number one, nothing's going on, yeah, or not good organizers.
Kibera resident Leo Odiambo runs a slum tour for curious visitors. This ramshackle, tightly packed place of open sewers and grinding poverty has been the site for hundreds of aid groups over the past few decades, yet very little seems to change.
There is a very big perception that they're wasting money on things that won't help.
While Leo is deeply cynical about aid, he acknowledges some groups do important work here, work the government should be doing, in healthcare and education. They even helped build this sewage recycling centre.
So, any question?
And do people generally have toilets in their home or some form of...
We used to have this thing called flying toilets. Just take a polythene paper bag, you poop on it, and just throw it outside, you know? Yeah, it looked very gross. So that's why they came up with the idea. The government also needs to try harder. The government is like accountable to each and every citizen, no matter the background, no matter where he or she comes from, you know.
Do you think there'll be a time when there is no slum here?
No, the slum is here to stay, because, you know, the government is the government. It's a give and take thing, eh? The more you give, the more they take.
That's a hot-button issue right now because Kenya is in the middle of an election campaign. Boniface Mwangi is an upstart political candidate running on the slogan, Power to the People.
I don't think aid is going to help those poor people. I don't think aid is what they need. What they need is infrastructure.
Every day on the campaign trail, where politicians traditionally buy their votes, the culture of power and patronage is plain to see.
Makazi, unaweza kuwa hapo niko na sera za kila mtu. Mimi sipotianangi do. I think the Kenya's biggest problem is corruption. That's it. Nothing else. If you deal with corruption, everything else will fall into place.
Boniface Mwangi is a former photographer turned activist, famous for his campaigns against government excess.
Na niko na record ya kupigania wanyonge. Mimi ni sauti ya wanyonge. Kama kazi nitafanya.
He argues foreign aid takes the pressure off Kenya's politicians, who are among the highest paid in the world.
When the government spends its biggest budget in paying salaries and buying big cars and buying many things that are not necessary, there's donor aid coming in to cover the necessary things. So what that means that your average poor citizen does not demand better from the government because they know what? The government doesn't deliver, so I'll just wait for the white guys to come and deliver aid or come and give us food.
In the past 40 years, Kenya's received more than $60 billion in aid, much of it in the form of soft loans, not food or housing.
It's very important that you actually, as a citizen, you actually ask your government, where do your taxes go? But Kenyans don't do that. So donor money actually plays a role of pacifying society. You pacify the community.
In down-at-heel suburbs like these, people see little of the education programs and economic reforms spruiked by their leaders.
But there is foreign aid trying to build the capacity of the government, isn't there?
The government has capacity. A government that actually knows how to steal millions of dollars is a government that has capacity. Kenya is 54 years old. We've been around for about 54 years. So we can't be a 54-year-old baby. We need partners. We need to do business. And that can only happen when we fight corruption. So I think we should be going away from aid dependency to now seeing how do you build business alliances, how do you work with other countries to get a market for our goods. But that cannot happen with corruption. So I think we need to go back. The bottom line for Kenya, and for Kenya to move forward, we must fight the corruption monster.
Those are big fights to be had on the national and international stage. In the Kenyan bush, the radical experiment, bypassing politicians and middlemen and giving cash to people like Mercy, is quietly gaining ground.
Sirikal emonego bedni kuongo konyo Kenya koro rem ma entiere go koreka iorone kony koa oko koro kony mano remcha koro joka ma koro timre nade boostwa alafu koro
this is going to give Mercy respect. People will start talking to her differently and will start talking to her children differently. People who thought that she was hopeless will see that there is hope in her.
Kaber, kata ini uon, ka ng'ato dwa konyi, kuongi konyri kendi.